She's written for some of the world's largest publications and is a true authority on all things Southern gastronomy. Let's welcome Amethyst Ganaway, chef, writer, and recipe developer. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for bringing this beautiful food with us.
Of course.
And each item tells a story, which I want to hear. I want to hear your story, though. Born and raised in North Charleston,
yes,
what was your path through the culinary landscape that's brought you to such a refined place in your career?
Absolutely. So my trajectory in the culinary field is not traditional by any means. I grew up under my grandmother, essentially, so that was really my first dive into food. But it wasn't until I really got into college where I started working in restaurants where I was like, oh, I have a passion for this. Mm-hmm. And down the line, I worked my way through restaurants as a front of house manager, back of house manager as well, and I got bored, and I was like, I want to be in the kitchen. Yeah. And I put myself in there, and then COVID-19.
The creativity is.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah.
and the passion and the moving, and honestly, talking to people is great, but there's something very special about being in the kitchen with people around you and having camaraderie.
But you've written for the New York Times and Savor Magazine and so many other publications. So how does someone? You're youthful. You're still a young lady.
Thank you.
But not to diminish your experience,
Absolutely.
but to write and to teach others your culinary background. And how would you describe that background?
My background really comes from lived experience, honestly. And getting into writing was, I'm not going to say happenstance, but in a way it was. COVID-19 began, and like most people in restaurants, I lost my job. Yeah. And I found myself on social media seeing a lot of the different discussions that were going on around the pandemic itself, around Black Lives Matter, and just all of the things that were going on. And I said, hey, I have some stories to tell. How can I tell these stories? And I was blessed to be able to get, like you said, with Food and Wine and New York Times and all these great places. So a lot of it just came from me, though, telling my stories and wanting to tell the stories of the people around me.
Sure. And is there one particular story that you just hold near and dear to your heart that just keeps you going every single day?
Every day, I honestly, when I do this, I think about my grandmother, I think about my family, I think about my friends and my many, many godchildren and what I want them to see when they read these articles or when they taste this food. And I want them to know that our food and our culture has history and is really, really special and it's beautiful. And it's not just food on your plate that you're eating. Yeah. Everything has a story that comes behind it.
Absolutely, and you've brought those with you.
Yes.
So let's talk some stories, shall we? Should we start with the cornbread?
Of course.
All right, so what kind of cornbread did you bring us?
So I made two cornbreads today. This one is just a scallion, black pepper, and a little bit of Parmesan cheese. A little untraditional and a very traditional riff. And then I just did my homemade, both these are homemade, sweet cornbread. I'm a sweet cornbread girl. There is a big debate that's old as the test of time of if your cornbread should be sweet or savory. I lean more towards sweet.
I'm with you.
So.
I agree. So what makes a special cornbread? What do you put in your cornbread that makes it so good?
A lot of love and a lot of butter.
And a lot of butter.
And a lot of butter.
That
Absolutely.
helps too.
Yes, ma'am.
What would be, is it a simple recipe?
Very simple recipe. I know it from scratch. So 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of cornmeal, 1 stick of butter melted. You have 1 cup of sugar if you like it sweet like me, but you can kind of test there if you want to. 3 teaspoons of baking powder, not baking soda because it will taste gross. Ooh. And then I also put 2 eggs in there as well. Heavy pinch of salt, even if you're making it sweet or not, because the salt helps bring out the flavor of the cornmeal and flour, doesn't leave it tasting too boxy cardboard tasting.
Right.
And then pretty much you mix them all together and you put it in the oven, 400 degrees, 20 or so minutes, and it's ready to go.
Wow, and you come out with something looking as beautiful as this.
Yes,
I love it. And what does this symbolize in your culture?
So, for New Year's, cornbread is extremely representative of a gold coin, of wealth, right? These are one of the things that you want to have on your table on New Year's Day, that you want to eat and share with your friends and your family that come in, again, to help symbolize wealth and prosperity throughout the new year.
And in case you were wondering what these collars are doing on this table, that also symbolizes wealth.
Absolutely.
Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So I actually got these collard greens from our friends over at the Lowcountry Street Grocery and Community Supported Grocery, who support all of our local farmers here in the area. And for New Year's especially, greens, leafy greens, again, I think I was telling you a little bit, I like collards, turnips, and mustard greens, represent wealth. These literally are representations of dollar bills. And of course, when you make something like greens, you want a big pot of it, right? Yeah. So much of our culture here in the Lowcountry is based around community and food.
That's right.
And we want to make a big old pot of it to be able to share with everybody, but also, again, to represent having lots of wealth.
It's beautiful. Got to talk about the Hoppin' John.
Absolutely.
And it's not Hoppin' John unless it has?
Unless it has the rice and the peas cooked together.
Cooked together.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
brought black-eyed peas, but
I
that's
did.
not the traditional Hoppin' John, you say.
It's not. So if you go back and you were to look back in some of these really historical cookbooks, and in most of our grandmother's kitchens here in the Lowcountry, you're going to actually see Hoppin' John made with field peas. They're a much smaller pea. They're in the same family as the black-eyed peas and the cowpea family. Both were brought by the enslaved West Africans here as a crop. And for a long time, these crops actually in South Carolina were used as cover crops and as fodder. They weren't even the things that people wanted to eat. But we took those traditions from West Africa of cooking one pot meal. So again, of course, you want to have these peas and this rice cooked together. And again, it's just a symbolism of lots of wealth and prosperity.
And believe it or not, there was a man named Hoppin' John, legend has it, that created this dish.
Absolutely.
And here we are eating it today.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And for people who want to learn more about you, where should they go?
You should go to my social media pages. At Instagram, it's at ThisG.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We're back after this.